Welcome friends to Chaoticism. Today, I finally bring this bag of pain incarnate to you. Indivisible is an action role-playing platformer released in 2019 where every of-age female character is a waifu, no exception. The gameplay is a mix between intense button-mashing action and intense button-mashing platforming, but we're not focused on the latter. Combat pits you against a sometimes unbearable amount of difficult enemies, counterbalancing this difficulty with the ability to choose 3 waifus or husbandos to fight alongside our heroine. But what if we took Indivisible's massive character roster and tossed it in the trash? Can you beat Indivisible with only one active character? This challenge may as well be called Slapdash Simulator, as we will put into a first-hand perspective the raw feeling of a porn star's butt after a relaxing day in the BDSM dungeon. The only character we can really use most of the game is the main one, Ajna, as she is the heroine of this tale. But there is one exception I will get to later on.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that!
The first boss of the game, Best Boy Dar, is your typical tutorial and is only fightable as Ajna. So we suck him up and push on to the first real and vastly harder enemy, a ball of blue shit in a cup. Unfortunately, you don't have access to the party menu before this fight, so Dar forces himself out of the dungeon against our will about halfway through the fight. But I did not command him, and the monster only attacked him one time, making his impact arguably negligible. But afterwards, he is immediately stuffed back into the ethereal dungeon. Frankly, I'm surprised Lab Zero even gives you the option to run a one-character team, as combat is dramatically weighted in the enemy's favor, being balanced for a full 4-party team, which is immediately apparent when you observe the amount of damage you deal and receive in these early parts of the game. My first draft of this script saw me obnoxiously drone on about how much pain and suffering I underwent fighting the small fry of the game, which was fucking miserable, let me tell you. TLDR, if the game doesn't force you, you don't need to fight it. Any experience and levels gained are negligible, so just ignore them. Now is the time to mention the one mechanic that allows us to complete this challenge, blocking. There are 2 types, purple and blue. Purple means you defended too early, receiving only partial damage, though perfect blocking, denoted by the blue shield, at this point in the game further reduces the amount of damage you take and has one special property. You cannot die if you perfectly block an attack. That's right, even though we take damage from it, perfect blocking will never let your health reduce further than 1. This is what allows us to endure the endless ass-kickings from this point forward, as we cannot kill enemies before they unleash the near-fatal smackdown upon us. We also pick up 2 conveniently placed researchers who will turn these floating red clumps of cremation remains, called ringsels, into power levels for either our attack or defense. Now, I'm sure you're dying to know what that little bar at the top of the screen does. That is another crutch necessary to winning this game. Per my knowledge at this point in the run, the itty bar allows you to do a powerful attack at the cost of an extended recharge of your first attack bubble. And for everyone sitting there who understands Indivisible's mechanics, hold on to your comments until after Ravanavar, trust me. The first real boss of the game, Pindiar, was also unironically my first and hardest roadblock. To start off the fight, you have to get ambushed, which automatically takes off 100 HP, over 1/5 of my total. No matter what I tried, I could not avoid this. This boss possesses 3 attacks, which is less than this basic enemy, mind you. Pindiar will either shoot an arrow using its sentient abdomen, slash you with its spider legs, or spit venom.
Pindiar could feel its hot venom gushing deep into Ajna as she trembled into yet another death. 2 years' worth of venom made a gropping noise as it flowed endlessly into Ajna.
Seriously, look this shit up. Now for the elephant in the room, my health. All fights in the early part of the game are endurance battles, seeing how long you can maintain perfection until you inevitably mess up. As I stated before, you still take damage when perfect blocking, but cannot die if you do so. This leaves us in a state of near death throughout the entire fight, as Pindiar, though reasonably so, has an incredible health pool. Even the slightest mistiming will leave us dead. But enough about direct combat. Most major bosses incorporate some form of inter-battle movement section where you have to navigate external hazards. I won't go into detail because it's no different than a vanilla run. Perfection was the name of the game here, but brute forcing through only 3 attacks with reasonable timings is definitely doable after enough crying. I died 32 times during this battle, but discovered the secret to fracturing this number in the later boss fights. We now find ourselves on Fortress Vamana. Our prison break leads us to a treasure room that gives us enough ringsels to unlock the 3rd attack bubble, further increasing the pain we can dish out. A new mechanic introduced here are the enemy blue attacks, which must be perfectly blocked lest you take the full damage amount. Most of these are forgivable, as Lab Zero intentionally designed them to be blatantly telegraphed, but there are always exceptions to the zero bullshit rule. Since obtaining the bow, we have the ability to shoot enemies out of the sky, but during combat you cannot do it until the second attack, as the uppercut is the first. This means that we must waste an attack bubble before being able to engage airborne enemies. Immediately after is technically the second boss, Manot Tiha. While not overly difficult, this big guy has one singular mega example of utter bullshit. A near instantaneous attack, making it really hard to block. Thankfully, it doesn't do much damage. The boss also spawns little minions to do his bidding, and due to our previous experience blocking them, and the fact that attacking them instead of the boss would egregiously extend the time spent in battle, we allow them the temporary gift of life. Having so much cannon fodder alongside Manot Tiha seems to make him attack less as well, a tactic that will be replicated in due time. But he was not much of an issue. As for the next boss, I cannot say the same. Though I incurred less deaths to Ravanavar than Pindiar, it was only due to a later epiphany that I prevailed. He has 3 phases. Phase 1 is plagued with an unavoidable attack, as the first time it is used, you cannot block it, forcing the damage upon you. A small amount, but it's still gay. Phase 2. Ravanavar does that thing no one likes and retreats to his flying throne, spawning 2 Hathi to fight for him. This would not be much of an issue if it weren't for 2 factors. This rear Hathi's laser is difficult to see due to its sprite literally being behind the first one. And though they're in a row, meaning most of our attacks hit them both, that fact is icing on a dog turd, because when Ravanavar strums his loot, death rains down upon you. Don't ask me what the timing is, I just winged it. Getting to the 3rd phase of this battle was nothing short of an act of God. This phase has Ravanavar going into sicko mode and unleashing Ragnarok. I died before I landed a single hit. This dick and ball torture had me put the game down for a few days before returning. Somewhere deep in the black void that is my mind, I remembered a moment from 2 years ago when I first played Indivisible. That was the healing power. After doing some hacking into the game files, I discovered the secret to Indivisible's meaning of life. That sequence is right button plus left button. This sequence activates a command heal with diminishing returns when used successively in a single battle. The downside is that you must have a full itty bar. I was able to brute force my way through this boss fight on the very attempt I rediscovered this action, managing to add insult to Ravanavar's injury by perfect blocking his ding-ding black lightning. With Ravanavar's human form down, we wipe the sweat and blood off our genitals and jump off the fortress that is now falling out of the sky and climb up Mount Sumeru to confront him once again. The twist being that he transforms into a hideous monster that is vastly easier. When I say easier, I mean that his wide array of 2-hole attacks have incredibly easy to predict timings, even throughout the 3 phases we see him. What is not easy, however, is that the challenge has been failed. Ravanavar, aka Tall, Dark, and Necky, aka Neckzilla, aka Cool Idea but you screwed me, now has like 9 heads, and each requires 1 single attack to dissolve and are separate from the boss's health pool. At this point in the game, with only 3 attack bubbles and 1 bar of itty, Ajna is only capable of an 8-hit combo, making us incapable of damaging the boss. I tried multiple times and even came back after the run to see if it was possible to have 4 attack bubbles, but was unable to produce a positive result outside of New Game Plus. More on that at the end of the run. Tack 1 onto the failure board, and let's push on because I hate myself. We allow Dar and Dar only to emerge into the sunlight to aid us in taking down the Big Neck. Ravanavar's health is slowly but easily whittled down due to his kindergarten level attack patterns. And now that we have unleashed God from her cocoon, we begin the 2nd phase of the game. To the astute viewer, we've only just completed the tutorial, and we're halfway through the video, but less than a third of the way through the game. From this point forward, I will be skipping large sections because it's all the same bullshit, just a different color. We wake up in the desert at the feet of the mommy waifu, and make our way to the next boss, Unt. This guy is a mage with the power to control a large sandworm, but forget about that, as our new sprint ability allows us to completely avoid it with good timing. Unt himself isn't too difficult, but all of his attacks have crazy wild timings. That concoction spells pain. A crazy fast blue attack that I had a hard time blocking, a long anticipated lightning strike, and an exaggerated staff swing, which is hard to see due to the camera being zoomed up Ajna's butt. I pretty much just cheesed my way through it with the healing ability, but good block timing was also necessary. One thing I want to point out is that you are only able to heal with Ajna when your itty bar is completely full, and we have gained 2 more portions. Now that Unt is down, we arrive in Port Mor Waifu, where we befriend a lesbian pirate captain and help start a revolution, or act of terrorism, depending on the perspective. These Iron Kingdom soldiers possess a disgustingly contemporary attack, blasting a cap in your ass. Sink or swim, the first half hour of fighting these guys is them playing patty cake with your booty as you attempt to get the timing down since they menacingly stare at you for a few seconds before pulling the trigger. A ridiculous amount of time was spent battling our way to the dock, but we get there eventually and axe murder a tank to death, subsequently gaining access to open world exploration. The only correct first destination is Kanul, where the music is great and the waifus are bountiful. The canonical best girl, Nuna, fucking fight me, is kidnapped here. By us. Nothing notable really happens this first run as we need to gain abilities from each of the 3 accessible locations and thus we must travel elsewhere. That somewhere else is Tai Krung, the city of cat girls. It is here we increase our block once again, this being the most important upgrade yet. Our perfect block now heals us for 1 HP. Don't scoff at that number. Whilst 1 HP means we would have to get attacked 1,000 times to reclaim a fraction of our health pool, by the way our HP went from 500 to 6,500 in the span of one cutscene, this means that perfect blocking no longer reduces our health, giving us an exponentially larger margin of error. Running around and getting the remaining movement abilities and fighting large group of enemies are about the same as a normal playthrough, so we're going to skip to the first trifecta of regional bosses. Kanul's first run has us fight the Serpent Queen, a gargantuan woman with a fist the size of Ajna and the ability to punch through your soul, unless you perfect block. Going into platforming is actually more of a boon than a hindrance, as her gimmick is that she refills her shield using orbs of Itty, which you can magnetically attract to fill your Itty bar. Had her attacks been more difficult to block or recognize, this instant refill of Itty would still have made the combat sections negligible. In fact, this is the easiest boss in the entire game, once you know what to do. After cutting her down to size, we move on to beat her now excommunicated right-hand zombie waifu's ass, who ambushes us as we're about to leave. This skeletal bird girl has 3 attacks all with different timings, to include a fucking grab, and is actually harder than the Serpent Queen herself, and will be fought again, so consider this practice. We return to Tai Krung and manage to gather enough cremated remains to obtain our 4th attack bubble before the next regional boss. That boss being Garuda Cruel. His gimmick is that he doesn't attack when in combat mode, allowing us the opportunity to unleash the smackdown. All of the pain dished out by him, however, comes from the inter-battle movement sections, where the only problem was his off-screen swipe. You still have to be observant that he doesn't decide to just blast you instead, as any damage taken is pretty crippling, because getting enough Itty to heal is painfully slow, due to only being able to do like 1.5 combos on him each turn. Unfortunately, this boss also suffers from the flying enemy's enigma, although with a little workaround. Ajna's first up attack is the axe uppercut, meaning we have to waste an attack bubble to knock him down if we're not quick enough after the initial takedown. The other downside is that following up an arrow shot with a down attack will cause it to explode for pathetic damage in lieu of the double axe swing, making Garuda Cruel just take for fucking ever. But once you get the pattern down, it's just a battle of patience until his inevitable demise. Next is fighting Princess Daddy Issues Daddy. Yeah, this girl stuffed her dad's corpse into a robot. That's kinda hot, not gonna lie. Moloch is probably the hardest boss since Ravanavar's human form. He possesses a large arsenal of 5 attacks. A devastating flamethrower, a quick fireball, a hard-to-predict lightning attack, some old-fashioned machine guns, and the ability to summon his own downfall, minions. Remember that the difficulty of this challenge is timing your perfect blocks to attacks, as an enemy can ravage your health bar pretty quickly if you fail. When an enemy possesses a large number of attacks, you have to use a combination of the icon below your character and the animation they do to know your timing window, which, after resetting your muscle memory 50 times, makes this scoring big titty goth girlfriend levels of difficult. Not only is it difficult to predict attacks, replenishing Itty is slow as well, and combined with the Moloch's fast attack speed leads me to taking devastating amounts of damage before being able to heal. Just about every goddamn time, I died right near the end of Moloch's health bar. Do you smell that? It kind of smells like cheese. Remember that 5th attack I mentioned? The one where he summons robot minions to kill you? Well, guess how many easy to predict attacks these guys have. That's right, 1. Before, I used these guys as Itty batteries to stalk a heal, but Moloch stopped summoning them after a while when I stupidly eliminated them. Normally, more enemies equals harder fight, but in this case, they were the crutch I needed. With 1 robot, it was about a 50-50 toss-up on who would attack. With 2 robots, Moloch rarely attacked, but with 3 robots, I don't remember ever getting attacked by Moloch again. With Princess Daddy Issues Daddy down, it was time to fight the intergalactic planetary god waifu head on.
Jesus Christ.
A long platforming section separated us from Kala, but upon arriving, we encounter what the majority of players would designate as the most infuriating and confusing boss fight in the entire game. Before I continue, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. That is Ajna, this is Kala, and this is Dar plus 3 cute waifus. Do we fail the challenge here? In my highly scrutinized opinion, no. Remember, this is a single character run, not strictly Ajna, because of this part right here. This is a scripted story moment, and Ajna is removed from your control. The second fact I must address is that yes, we are forced into having 4 characters here. This is unavoidable. Kala's attack, however, hits everyone and deals equal damage across the board, so having the spare party members here is ultimately meaningless if we refuse to block with them. The objective for this boss is very indirect. We now take on the perspective of the many enemies that have come before, tasked with wailing on Ajna's nearest head where your party floats to build up the now extended itty meter. Once full, Maha Haruka will unleash a devastating attack. This must be repeated 3 times. Now, back to Kala's attacks. Her first 2 laser beams are blockable and deal minuscule damage to the party. But the third attack is not. It is unblockable and ravages most of your remaining health, bringing you down to a critical state. Being hit a 4th time is unavoidable death. Normally, if you know what to do, this isn't a factor, as 4 characters going ham is enough to rapidly build up the itty meter. But with only 1 character, it seems near impossible. My first 5 attempts saw me die almost immediately into round 2 of this Ajna beatdown. My 6th attempt, I managed to fill the bar twice and get to round 3, though I met my end soon after. Disheartened, yet determined having made it to round 3, I had an idea. Up to this point, I had been collecting Ringsels by memory. I decided to collect more to get that final attack upgrade. In a desperate attempt, I had to reload a previous save, undoing hours of progress to before I went to Monkville as I was 1 Ringsel short and was locked into Mount Sumeru. After spending more time than I liked repeating the same song and dance, I managed to get enough Ringsels to obtain the final attack upgrade. With newfound confidence, I returned to Kala to unleash the intergalactic smackdown upon her. With 3 beautifully animated waifus by Best Boy Dar's side, we begin the battle with Kala once again. In round 1, I mashed my Y button into the floor, remember that detail, managing to complete this round with 1 attack from Kala. Round 2 started off with a bang, but I was ultimately wiped once again. Did I give up? Was it possible to beat Kala? You know me, I don't quit until I do. My 8th and final attempt, I figured it out. I outsmarted God. To understand this, I need to explain the combat mechanics a little better. I'm no expert, but I know how to observe. When an enemy or ally is attacking, all attack gauge charging is stopped, even for bosses. Every frame past a full attack gauge is precious time wasted for you as Kala builds meter to vaporize your very existence. The key to winning is attacking before building a full gauge. I usually waited until the 4th bubble, but the increased recharge speed on this boss fight made it really difficult to judge when that was. Regardless, my timing was sufficient. Having blocked and attacked only with Dar, I successfully filled the itty meter 3 times, ending this fight without failure, and ascending Dar to the realm of husbandos.
That's some good shit.
With this victorious loss and the maintenance of my self-esteem, we begin Arbitrary Faffing About Session 2.0. Like before, normal enemy fights still take an asinine length of time to complete, but our maxed out gauge allows us to unleash enough damage to make the time spent passable. Too bad I figured out avoiding all optional enemy encounters reduces the frustration and dawdling of this already absurdly long run damn near 2/3 of the way through. Our heroine, after ending a significant human life in her berserk rage, has become humbled by the experience and realizes the first half of the game she was a too big for her britches know-it-all, and understands that being a Karen isn't the only way to solve your problems. But talking things out isn't a good game mechanic in an action platformer, so we proceed to solve our problems through violence once again. The first subject of our wrath is the honestly quite understandably enraged Tsitsi, who has been possessed by a supernatural force. Fighting her is almost exactly the same as before, the only addition being the new dash mobility course between phases. The second poor sap is Garuda Cruel, the rematch. The god spot from before doesn't work this time around, so I developed a new strategy. Stand still and hold block. Garuda Cruel had the audacity to tell me I had help. I'd tell him to go fuck himself, but he smacks Alt F4 faster than I could retort, giving him the last laugh. And finally, we have to fight Sloppy Princess Daddy Issues, the Slime Queen waifu. Unlike the previous 2, there is a lot to unpack here, so strap in and up. A new gimmick has been introduced where you receive damage when you physically strike slime-based enemies, whilst they simultaneously heal themselves whenever they deal unblocked damage to you. What this means is we're going back to our roots and embracing that critical state once again. Our blocking needs to be on point, lest our pain train leaves the station. But it's not all raindrops and the devil beating his wife Sunshine, my guys, and possibly gals, because if you paid attention to my words, you'll know I specifically chose them to foreshadow the solution. The up, down, 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 down attack combo is not viable for this boss as we'd be at 1 HP right out the gates. Arrows are the new cool, as we don't receive damage when they strike the Slime Queen, thank God. Unfortunately, we still need to connect with her the first attack in the combo, and this slowly drains our health to critical. To add to this shit sandwich, the Slime Queen boasts quite the repertoire of attacks that throws off your timing in an already tight fight. Compounding this with a third-person platforming section that destroys your flow makes for an incredible change of pace. Do you smell that again? Cause I sure do. Call me a fucking mouse cause I love me some cheese. You already knew it, there isn't a tough boss without some cheese, and the Slime Queen is a whole block, literally. Slime Queen turns into an indestructible block of boy tears at certain points in the fight, requiring you to use a specific command attack that is learned and is only necessary here to break her defense. But if you just don't do that, you can build Infinite Itty and stock a heal until you're ready to move on. I've already got those crazy blocking skills, so hell yeah. Slime Queen is down, and Princess Daddy Issues realizes she was just a crazy bitch this whole time. But, can I still get your number though? Now, those of you familiar with Indivisible know all that is left is climbing Mount Sumeru and fighting Kala for the final time. Well, to be completely honest, it's mostly unchanged, except for Kala's head form taking an incredible amount of time to complete, and for someone who spent this whole playthrough mastering perfectly blocking, I died a pretty standard number of times in the final confrontation, which is just an extended blocking minigame. So can you beat Indivisible with only one character? I'm gonna slap a big maybe on here. Okay, so it's been like 7 months since I recorded this run and wrote the script, so I'm just gonna drop the New Game Plus footage here. Yeah, you can definitely whoop Ravanavar's ass, but goodness me, it takes forever. Like 30 repetitious minutes. You have to build up 3 levels of Itty to do the Kamehameha attack that both hits enough times to remove Ravanavar's last few heads and also deal damage.
Now that's a lot of damage!
So as far as my knowledge goes, it is not possible to complete this challenge on a fresh playthrough, though you can on New Game Plus. Thank you for sticking with me up to this point. Let me know your favorite waifu from any form of media down in the comments section below. I will see you again soon, and remember that senpai you simped over in high school would have just treated you poorly. Find someone who loves you for you. Bye.